We shall start. Yes. Tejashri, if you can start with the introduction, then.
Good afternoon, one and all present here. I am Tejashri from second year BCom. It gives me immense pleasure to be the host for today's session. This afternoon, we all have gathered here to attend the second session of the program Swarajya at 75. Ethics and Self-Governance Cell of SSMRV under the guidance of our beloved principal, Dr. S. Anil Kumar sir, and the club's coordinator, Dr. Shalini ma'am, has organized the Student Enrichment Webinar in association with Disha Bharat, Bengaluru. Disha Bharat is an NGO working in the field of value education since 2005. Various activity-based workshops are conducted for students, faculty, and parents on the theme Know Yourself, Know Your Country, Know Your Culture. In the last 16 years, Disha Bharat has reached over 4 lakh students through its workshops. My Bharat, an online youth campaign to imbue patriotism, was organized by Disha Bharat in August 2020 to commemorate Indian independence. This campaign reached over 15 lakh people on their media pages. As a part of My Bharat Online Youth Campaign 2021, Disha Bharat has organized Swarajya at 75 session to rekindle the spirit of patriotism and inspire the youth to understand the glories of the past, realities of the present, and their role in building the future of this nation. On the eve of 75th year of Indian independence, let us all unite and work towards making Bharat the Vishwaguru. We have amidst us Srimati Shakuntala Iyer today, who shall ignite patriotism in the young minds. I extend my hearty welcome to Honorable Speaker of today's occasion, Srimati Shakuntala Iyer ma'am. Welcome you, ma'am.
Namaste. Namaste.
I would like to welcome all the faculty members present. And finally, I welcome my dear fellow participants to this webinar. Hereby, I request Anantraj of second year BCom to introduce our guest speaker to the gathering. Over to Anantraj.
Good afternoon to all. I am very privileged being asked to introduce our speaker Shakuntala Iyer. Srimati Shakuntala Iyer, a social activist and a motivational speaker, hails from Mysore. She has done Masters in English from the University of Mysore. She also has a diploma in management. She has more than 3 decades of work experience in both IT and non-IT industries. She has worked actively involving in handling resources, technologies, and businesses. Srimati Iyer has been involved in policy research, administrative reforms, and e-governance solution designs. She works with MSME, organic farmers, startup industries by passion. Srimati Shakuntala Iyer nurtures a deep love for Indian temple architecture, heritage, and classical music. She is also involved with Gau Krishi Foundation, an NGO to promote cow-based organic farming. She is inclined to work on environment, natural healthcare, rural economics, and sustainability. She is associated with many associations. To list a few, her immediate past was chairperson for Karnataka for National Real Estate Development Council, an apex national body under Ministry of Housing, Government of India. She has been a member of FINS, Forum for Integrated National Security. Mentor for 3 startups in media, organic retail chain, and agritech. Advisor for Lagu Udyog Bharti, Society for MSME Entrepreneurs. Trustee for Gau Krishi Foundation and Bharata Punaruttana. Promoter for Desi Uttana Organics and Rishi Herbal Foods, based on herbal nutraceuticals. She has been the board member for Board of Governors in IT, National Institute of Technology, Hamirpur, till March 2020, appointed by Ministry of HRD, Government of India. I would like to welcome Shakuntala Iyer ma'am to this webinar.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And are we starting?
Thank you for amazing introduction. Yes, ma'am. Now I request guest speaker of today's session to take over. The platform is all yours, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you so much. First and foremost, I would like to congratulate all of you, all of us, that have reached 75 years of independence. In a system where a day is counted as productive and one's lifetime probably goes up to a normal 60 years of span, 75 is a good number that we have lived democracy successfully and progressing here. The concept of Swarajya has been the focus of our campaign or our discussion today, is promoted by Ethics and Self-Governance Cell of SSMRV institution, I'm very happy to even read this title. Where the world today is getting into the fight of identity, a competitiveness, or a war mode in which each country has to grow in their GDPs, grow in their identities, and reach the Mars and reach the moon, we are still grounded. We are talking about ethics and self governance. It's a very, very pleasuresome statement to understand 116 participants in the room today, including me. I'm not an avid researcher, I'm not an academician. I'm a person who is connected to the ground, and my probably 3 decades of experience is being with people, being with temperaments, understanding the different nuances that change the economic progress of the country every decade. We were in the most confused stage of education when we all started our education because we didn't know where we were supposed to reach. The objectives were not set, the vision was not set to the country at the time. That was the 80s and the 90s, where we really had struggled to get good education, only to realize later that what we knew was more education than what we learned in schools and colleges. Very unfortunately, the 75 years, we had to undo a lot of things. A lot which was, what do you say, is a shaken by the British rule, shaken or uprooted by the invasions past 1000 years. We were economically stripped, culturally uprooted, socially disturbed, and damaged spiritually as a country, lest we forget. Our today's success, if we have to claim, we are rooted in the pain of past, where every of our next step has to be decided by a newly discovered thought process, which will lead us to self-reliance or Swarajya and establish our society or country in Swarajya, the good governance. I'm always, when I'm with students, I don't talk much about history because many lectures that you heard or many things that you have studied in your past would have given you ample examples of what we went through in the past, step by step, decade by decade, century by century, and how the thought process initiated or ignited by the Lal Bal Pal trio, the Lala Lajpat Rai, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, and Bipin Chandra Pal, the triumvirate of assertive nationalists to the British rule India in the early 20th century, between 1906 and 1918, advocated the Swadeshi movement. When we talk about Swadesh, the aspects that we would like to touch upon are the very first thing is administrative independence, which we achieved or supposed to have achieved in 1947. We are still to achieve a lot more in our economic, social empowerment. In our self-reliance part, we are just lacking in education system. We are lacking in the energy to sustain ourselves in the industrial platform. Why all this happened? What all have gone behind the scene? We are not directly engaged to understand the pain of freedom movement what made a race of lakhs of nationalists giving their lives for the nation's freedom struggle. Swaraj as a word was coined by Bal Gangadhar Tilakji, who deeply opposed a British education system and ignored and defamed India's culture, history, and values. He resented the denial of freedom to the expression of nationalists and the lack of any voice or role of ordinary Indians in the affairs of their nations. So, Swaraj is not just a thought, Swaraj is an identity. Swaraj is what makes you live here in this country with your head held high. I would like to start briefly talking about more towards the economic side because the children who participate today, I believe, are from commerce, management, and economic thought stream. Why we need to know something about what British have rendered us to? Do you know? During the approximately 13,000 days of British rule in India, what have we lost? What have we lost? There was a recent statement by India's Foreign Minister. We lost close to 45 trillion in today's monetary value just through the Brits. Just through the Brits, 45 trillions. Just try to figure out the number of zeros on the right side. This includes the incalculable quantities of wealth, icons, statues, scrolls, and books, not just money. They looted from the treasuries of the Indian kings, businessmen, temples, landlords, schools, colleges, charitable institutions, and common people. Give an example. In September 1695, a state-sponsored English pirates attacked a large Indian trading ship carrying 900 passengers. After murdering a large number of men and raping the women folk over several days, they took off gold, silver, and precious stones, which has an estimated value of 2 lakh pounds to 6 lakh pounds. In modern times, it is 400 million. At the time, an average Englishman's salary in England was 32 pounds. Do you get what we are talking about? This was one event, one accident, one attack on an Indian ship by the sponsored pirates of Englishmen. Robert Clive, the first general in India, when he retired, took 250,000 pounds of cash and a jagir worth of 27,000 pounds when he returned home in 1774. The bounty wasn't enough, and he proceeded to steal 1,000,000 pounds more by shaking down Indian kings, kingdoms, businessmen, and the peasantry. Hope you get what I say. I'm just citing one or two examples of economic loot which has killed Indians' GDP. In 1993, the Belgian economist Paul Barot presented a detailed study of world economy of Indian and world history. In 1750, China shared the global GDP was as 33%. India stood at 24.5%, and the combined share of Britain and US in 1750 was 2%. 1947, when India became free, the country's GDP comprised around 3% of the global economy. Where are we? Where are we? Where were we at 1947? Why I am so particular in mentioning these things to you is that requires tremendous amount of empowerment at the ground level to rebuild sources, resources, skills, attitudes, and knowledge. An institution is just a medium. What you study today in your books or textbooks is not even 1% of what you are going to deal with in life. We have seen past 75 years the democratic system in which we didn't have anything of our own. We also had to borrow a few things in our constitutions to make it a workable structure. When Baba Saheb Ambedkar had a large, very large challenge of framing the governing rules for independent India. Very unfortunately, even today, we are not self-sufficient, we are not complete, we are not perfect, we are evolving. Why it has happened? Why it has happened? It's happened because every decade, when the country wanted to surge ahead, by providing a direction to the nation, the challenges faced across the globe used to set us back, and we were not prepared. What we intend to deliver, what we intend to visualize 3 steps ahead used to be pulled back by 2 steps by the global powers who set their own narratives on their expectations in India or on Bharat. Instead of focusing on empowerment, the democratic system in India became a social system wherein providing for or taking care became the motto of the government successively. I'm not blaming a political system which basically was rooted out of the thought or maximum education during the entire freedom struggle was upon the British era, and there was much time needed for us to evolve ourselves and tell our people what we need to study, what we need to understand, and what we need to deliver. We were not ready with high-powered education. We were not ready with technology institution. We were not ready with anything that would economically strengthen us immediately post-independence. If you know well, our institutions like Indian Institute of Science were founded by the Tatas. Our aeroplanes, our system of airways was founded by the Tatas. The large industrialists were rooted in the last few decades of the British Empire, made way by donating, building reformative education in India, reformative systems in India, which has actually given us some kind of basis. Today also, India's education is a patronage. We study the same old things, which probably are not very relevant for the future. I'm not against history. I'm for history which will teach you lessons for your future. For our Swarajya or good governance, we need to understand our directions very clearly as what we want to do and where we have to go. The objectives of our education have to be defined in such a way that will drive us to think that the shoulders of today's children have a larger responsibility of framing the future of 130 crore Indians. From here, what is that we need to do is the big challenge I would like to talk, because my experience of working on the ground talks about governance, the policies, and what we need to do forward to deliver the vision probably for a couple of more decades. new dimensions of democracy that is supposed to be going or taking us towards self-governance. Let's start one by one. Are we into the right social framework which will prompt us to get into a good education system and deliver our good? From the time we took our own educational institutions in India post-democracy, all that we studied was the narrative set by the British or by the West about what India was or about what Bharat was. We still talk about the Sati system, which doesn't exist right now. We still talk about many systems that are part of past, which we have forgotten, which we are not living. Why are we pulled back? Because the world knows, the West knows that India has a power to surge ahead with the strengths of today's cumulative demographic dividend, that is youth power of India, which can take us to the global height in a decade if you make up your mind. So, what should be pulled down by telling you the past? Look, your grandparents were practicing untouchability. Look, your system was agrarian. You're not were doing this. You have no knowledge. You have no processes. You don't have set standards. Not true. Not true. Today, or a decade back, largest employees in the technology research cell of Microsoft were Indians. Global giants of technology like Google are headed by Indians. Microsoft has gone to Indians. What are we talking about? I'm not just talking about the technology companies, because that is what we have surged ahead, thankful to the new global economy of 1991. Why we are not able to make it in the innovation, why we are not able to do it in the rocket science, is because of the poorest structures in education that we have not been able to nourish forward. We study the same thing what we studied in 1960s and the 70s and the 80s. The ratio is something which has gone wrong, not the subject. How much technology we require, how much focus on what section we require. Someone kindly mute. Yeah, thank you so much. We didn't focus how much of social studies we need to study, how much of culture we need to know, how much of economics each one of us should know, how much of industry that one has to get exposed, how much of the globe one has to get exposed. Thankfully, you are in an era where a digital system is giving you a lot of exposure to the global systems, or you are able to get information at your fingertip. Very unfortunately, during the past decades, we didn't have the privilege to know things because the books we were getting in our libraries were written by people who were sponsored by the West to bring a divisive narrative for India, to bring you a feeling that we were inferior to the rest of the world. A few points which I mentioned in the beginning about the Indian economic supremacy, the Indian share of the world economy or world GDP, was to tell you how good we were in the past. If you recollect a few things, I would like to highlight a few cultural aspects here about India. The Asian region, which is predominantly run by the Hindus in the previous era, has temples. And a temple, as you know, is not built overnight. A few of them would have taken centuries for their glorified finish, the historic finish they have, and the monumental finish they have. If you have just observed, where was the money? Where were the skills? Who were the people who built it? What was the thought behind it? When our kings ruled, why were the temples being built and why not roads at the time? There were no other monument other than temples. Means to say, our country has to be understood by the multi-dimensional thought process which balanced us on the ground so far. The sculptor who took his entire life to probably carve a few pillars never wrote his name below that. Do you see the names of sculptors in any of the temples in our monuments? Have you ever observed? And if you are talking about the valuation of a pillar or an idol, either of a metal or of a structure, if you would like to evaluate it into an economics perspective, can you imagine the kind of value it would be? Each one of them would be to make you proud of your country. Just trying your thought saying that we are no less. We have been fed with the thought that we are less because we had more than 100 languages in India. Each one of us were taken different languages to communicate. But we had community living. We were producing what we were good at. But today also, you vehemently read about Indian kings and their internal fight about supremacy. And we feel disgusted. Okay, this is why we let the British in. What we don't read is that each king who took care of his kingdom did his best job with good moral practices and ethics so that his pupils survived well. Our art was alive, our culture was alive, our economics was alive, our agriculture was alive. Nobody talked about it. I am here to tell you the glory of the past, to recollect during our 75th independence struggle, 75th Independence Day celebrations, lest you forget the past glory and get demotivated. All that we talk at this point in time may not have any relevance. You can't talk about sculpture, you can't talk about goldsmithy. But each of those skills today are resurging, empowering lakhs of Indian artifacts, making them global identified GI tags. You heard about GI tags? Basically, we have GI tags about certain artifacts and certain products across India, which talks about the supremacy of a certain product. Do you know the globe aspires to own them up? Do you know the jewels of India, which are handcrafted, are so beautiful? Can you even imagine the kind of art on the stone walls of Belur or Halebedu can be recreated by any machine? Lest we forget. All that we are talking today is that we need to recreate all of them or more of them in a space that suits the future. You would have heard about the NEP, the new education policy of India. The bills are getting presented in the parliament now. All of you have a challenge to come out of the books of theory and adopt a very, very practical problem solving approach as demanded by the education system tomorrow, as demanded by the professional system tomorrow, for which you need to see what's going to be our future. Till a decade back, we never talked about a uniform taxation system. Have you? Now you are in a GST era. Students of commerce would obviously realize that there is a need to move ahead, there is a move to change ahead. We were not into a policy of micro, small, medium enterprises tagged under one nation law, and all of us have equal rights to run the business in India without having state discrepancies. Do you know about it? We have a lot more to talk about if we have to segregate the industries from food processing to microchip level. Many of them we missed in the past 3 decades because we didn't focus on our education to the research level. Most of the innovations in India went out of India, took patent elsewhere, created economics of that country, and today we are sitting here at the back end becoming their call centers. Do we want this? This is not self governance that we are asking for. It is not just about the rupee value that we create on a daily basis. It is not the GDP driven by that. It's going to be about the total product that we produce, how innovative, how futuristic, how thought proven, and how challenging they are going to be in future. On a daily basis, we have innovators who create products in India which require skilled people, researched policies, global placement, and a market push. And these are the challenges of today, which we are in when we talk about governance. We need a tectonic shift in learning from a library based education to a practical approach to education where you go interact and learn, where you go out of your seat and learn. A lot of professions, as I see today, are not getting enough of manpower. A lot of industries don't get manpower because we have people who are educated but not employable. Robots are replacing human beings for lack of skilled resources. Very unfortunately, we cry saying that we don't get jobs in the world. One simple example of a hotel industry, why I make it very simple, is that it is a day-to-day industry you could see. Such a beautiful science. India has an ability. India has a diversity. India has a culinary ability. I'm not just talking about the ability, I'm talking about a culinary ability. The tasteful cuisine of the world is managing to put dosas through a machine. Why are we there? Because we felt the hotel industry is not so high as a computer industry. Isn't it? We have agriculture producers. If you just observe Bengaluru market flooding with vegetable carts in the evening, vegetable lorries in the evening, coming from different locations, thronging here for sales, 40% goes waste. Why they go waste? At one side, we have demand. We're talking about malnutrition. We talk about need for food. We talk about poverty. We talk about not being able to reach the consumer. At the same time, we waste food. Why? A sheer mismatch in demand and supply, a sheer mismatch about location and growth. Who has to prove these things? I don't have a screen share. It's okay. I don't have a screen share. I talk. We are talking about food processing industries getting attention past 3 years or 4 years. Why? In the world over, hunger is the primary statistics that comes to the picture when we talk about survival. There are countries like Somalia who suffer without even having 2 meals properly. They can't grow. They have no access to good food. We grow, but we spoil the good food that we grow. Secondly, we have trade. We have opportunity to export. But when our container reaches the other country, we get rejected. Why? We do manipulation. Our ethics are missing. Why I mentioned a hateful clap to your ethics and self-governance cell in the beginning is to highlight on these two things. We miss ethics. We contaminate the food that we send. We grow them chemically, mix them with the chemical free food, and try to sell for money. That is where India is losing out on the global platform, despite in having the ability to deliver large quantity of food. We are an agrarian economy. What did we do for the past seven decades? We demeaned agriculture. We told an agriculturist son, look kid, wear shoes and try and go to school. I'm not against school system. I'm only trying to say he had inherited his proper skills in agriculture. We ignored. When we were young, we were exposed to a lot of children who were carrying forward their parents' jobs. We told the world, or our people wrote research papers and told the world that, look, the child is abused. He goes with father to do hair cutting to a client, to do agricultural labor. Look, he as a child is helping his father in the hotel. They are exploiting. Did you get where the narratives get born? A good cook is born with his parent. Maybe 10% is an exception. A good barber is born with his parent. A good hotelier makes his child learn his trade first. This is true of any skill. Did we pamper our skills? No. We sent them to school. Among you, maybe 100 of you come from different backgrounds. I don't know your parental education. But before that, for sure, ask your parents what their background was. I have an experience of dealing with a child who was son of a carpenter who came to our company as an office assistant. And he was one among the cutest kids who used to wrap my CDs very well. We were creating education CDs at the time. And he used to craftfully cover that and make a parcel pack out of it. And I just observed and asked him, how do you do this? He said, I'm a carpenter's son, ma'am. I know how to cut these things. I asked him, what made you stop all this and come here? What is your education? He said, ma'am, I failed in 10th. Not his fault. The next day I called his father and asked him, your son has not passed 10th. What would you like to do with him? He is working here at the time, 2 decades back. He was working here for 2,000 rupees salary. How long will you continue this? He was confused. I asked my colleague, his name is Suresh, what is your interest? He said, ma'am, I would like to go back to my carpentry skills, which I'm very good at. We let him go. Today, he is in a place called Bedagala near Mysuru, creating some of the marvelous doors which adorn the front of a new house. Marvelous doors. And there is nobody who matches him. He probably take 2.5 months to create a door, and that makes somebody's house. He has no regrets. A few years back, I got to know that a team of children got together to learn goldsmithing. And the trainer told me that they are using the most modern machines to create golden artifacts. I'm no fan of golden artifacts. I'm no fan of gold either. I just felt a little bad. It may be a little unhealthy for a goldsmith to sit at what he is doing, what he has been doing for centuries. Instead of upgrading his ability to deliver, we diverted his abilities to a machine to make a woman like me to feel that I can afford to buy gold and adorn that. You can ask the questions after another 4 minutes. Another 4 or 5 minutes, we can ask questions. I try to answer what I am. There is a hand raising. Sandeep, we could talk later. What I'm trying to tell all of you is that much has to be done to deliver Swarajya, self governance. If you have to undo the past, which is looted India, which has looted Bharat of her identity, you have lot to do in future, and the basics of all that resides in ethics. Don't cheat your conscience. The conscience is the strongest frame that gives your identity, whichever is the profession you are going to be. World is opening for many kind of industries. There is more of your ability to scope of. World has challenges to face, but your ability to cope will come with your strength inside. And no other country other than Bharat can give you that dimension by her cultural, spiritual, social abilities to infuse the strength in you. I don't have too much to say theoretically. Practically, if you really ask me to do something about things, there will be a few lines I can talk about it. But Swarajya as such is not an imposition, but it is life. Democracy will be fullest if you are able to take charge of your life and guide yourself into a profession that takes you a proud level and contributes to the society. I would like to rest my case. You could open up the discussion forum. Ma'am, Shalini ma'am,
Yes, ma'am. Yeah,
I would like to take it up for question and answer if children are okay.
yes, yes, ma'am. Students, if you have any queries, uh, please put it in call messages. Ma'am will answer your queries.
There were some raising hands. Sandeep, I just saw Sandeep. Any question?
Hello, ma'am. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. This is Gokul here from the Department of Commerce.
Okay.
I Can I ask my question in case I'm not overtaking the students?
Your students, I
Yeah.
think they have not come up with their questions only, so you can start.
Sure, sure. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for that. I think we have. I think you have touched upon all the things starting from history, and you said you will not be talking about history because that is something which has been talked about by most of them, and you gave us more of the economic and the social aspects. Thank you so much, ma'am, for that. My question was with regard to 75 years of independence. I think the five pillars that has been given by our Prime Minister, the freedom struggle, ideas at 75, achievements at 75, actions at 75, and resolve at 75.
Yeah.
So, what's your take on this? I mean, how do you kind of look at this? Of course, not it's not a political question, but it's more from an analytical perspective. That if you could have your say on these five pillars, that will be great. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the question. It was quite driving, in fact. All these years, we have probably our past 7 decades, we have been dependent. We are a dependent thought leaders. We have a dependency on. In case I would like to compare myself, I would say, okay, US is doing great in this, so I am here. So that was my parameter. Japan is doing great here, so it is my standard. We were into a comparative thinking. We were into comparative resolutions. We were into comparative targets. If London is doing good in this, I would like to be here. The first and foremost thing, what we need to resolve at Swarajya 75 is the empowerment standard that each one of us is going to reach. The empowerment is completely devoid of a comparison. Empowerment is a self-drive. Each one of your children, probably hundreds of them, if you ask them, what is their ability? Evaluate their ability and set them a target. They themselves have to set the target, not we. Do you think anybody is less? My simple question. Nobody is less. Our problem is the rank 1, rank 2, the rank 3, And the rank 10, we evaluate and tell them, look, you are more and you are less, which has to get eliminated in future system. It has to be completely empowerment based. My ability to deliver could be 30 out of 100 challenges that I do. But my ability to do 30 has to be encouraged because I can solve 30 issues. That is where our evaluation parameter has to change. And second thing is that, as I said, let's not compare. An agrarian economy child can never be compared to an industry child. His life and process would be different. We have no right to compare both of them like apples and oranges and try to tell, look, you have scored 35 marks, whereas he has scored 90 marks. The system of marks has to go. I don't believe in that either. And you would realize that because the aptitude in children is so high, which is decided by their raw energies. They're very energetic, they're very open, they're very curious, they're very able, they're very healthy. Instead of promoting what they have, we are trying to tell them something above that and showing them, look, you are not here. That is bad. And this is what is the major resolve we need to talk about when it comes to education and the way we have to tell our children to move ahead. Anything in this regard?
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. I think that kind of builds a background because if we start from the 60s and 70s, I think we were very much following Russia in terms of following
Exactly.
the socialist economy. After that, once Russia was there, then it was the US that we started comparing
True.
ourselves with. After that, we started comparing with our neighbor who's China. And now I think we have started realizing we had lost our own potential. We didn't know what is best in us, and we started always comparing. That is why probably we have come out from that 5-year plans and all that, and we have kind of got into something more self-reliant and all that. Thank you, ma'am. Beautifully answered. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ma'am, good afternoon, ma'am. Can I?
Okay, Anand, a question.
Yeah, ma'am.
Why is it now possible to reach democracy at its fullest by starting R&D from root level to achieve Swarajya? Has R&D being more effective nowadays? Anant, thank you for your question. Here we have the thinking. When you mention R&D, I'm sure that you're talking in terms of technology and science. Am I right? We're talking about technology.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Just keep it a little aside and talk about what requires to be researched has to be sustainable. What industry are we focusing has to be sustainable. Sustainable has two meanings. One, the sustainable in terms of not impacting the earth negatively, like plastic. Plastic impacts the soil badly, so that is not sustainable in that way. Second is economically sustainable. That means to say, if you start something today, it has to be there in the industry for at least 3 more decades, so that the system that you establish around it, okay, will get empowerment, economics and economic support, all employment, all this stuff. Am I right? Am I right? That's what we are talking about.
Yes, ma'am.
So when we talk about R&D from the root, if you have seen the world, we have lost the challenge of semiconductors. We are not into integrated circuit season, which basically even today we are importing, which is an essential component for most of our equipments in India. Today we are talking about ventilators, we are talking about oxygen generators. Why I am talking this is, you would have heard it during the COVID times. We don't have the integrated circuits manufactured in India. We missed that R&D. It would have happened in the 80s. It would have happened in the 70s. We missed that. We cannot re-establish. We are moved ahead. We are not into components-based economy. We are not there. We are moved ahead to product-based economy. We are able to manufacture. We are able to assimilate. We are able to bring out new digital algorithms to integrate into a hardware. But we are not into the production of semiconductors. We are not there. We missed it. Because we can't compete. So for example, if you see the Intel chips, inside your Intel, inside your digital hardware systems, you cannot compete with Intel to manufacture because Their R&D has much gone ahead. It's a 2 decade old. It's senior to us by 2 decades. And their investment gone into that is very, very high. Okay. What we can do right now is that there are a few popular verticals which we have to ignore by the trend of it and move ahead for futuristic trends. We are into, if I just have to give you an example, we are moving ahead in NASA. You have heard about our ability in space, right? The space, we are doing remarkable achievements in ISRO. If you have seeing the developments past 5-6 years, we are doing remarkable in space because our scientists have surged ahead in the research which can create, manufacture different components of a space shuttle indigenously. We are importing war vehicles today in defense. And defense happens to be the largest budget in India for everything. You compare any other budget, defense is the largest budget. We are importing. We are losing our exchequer. We are trade deficit. Why our currency is inflating? Because we have dependencies for all these products across the globe. We have started manufacturing our own defense equipments to the tune of 60% in India. We have jeeps today. We have guns today. What we don't have is planes. We don't have warplanes. We are going to manufacture, maybe 3 years down the line, our indigenous planes would be ready in India. Whatever people talk about, our technology absorption has been accelerated maybe 100 times past 5 years, thanks to the nationalistic government. So R&D per se has to be focusing on what is required for 30 more years or 50 more years rather than talking what we just missed. Let us leave it. We can't go back. We can go ahead. But Swarajya, in the sense of empowerment, global power, will be achieved the minute you achieve your defense power. I agree with you when you mentioned, can we achieve Swarajya? Yes, we can achieve Swarajya. If you are ethically right and if you hold our head high and say, I am strong in my military power. It's not that we want it, but it is because others have it. Here we need to compare and become self-reliant. Thank you. Am I clear, Anant? Is there something that you would like to add in the question? Yeah, Guru.
Nothing more, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. My question is where we need to take a stand and where we need not take increase GDP and economy. Guru Kiran, our concept of GDP has so far been driven by the products that we produce, the products and the trade and all this stuff, cumulatively. And the GDP never considered agriculture as an economic component. Do you know? We don't consider agriculture as an economic parameter. And today, because of food processing, we are able to add that value into GDP because we engage people and their salaries being paid and industries being happening around them, and there is a turnover and there is a tax. Primarily, if we can come out of the traditional GDP thinking, where, see, if you see GDP as such, when there is an earthquake happening and the entire location gets demolished, and suddenly there will be surge of activities on the next day for reconstruction of the bridges, of the roads, and of the buildings. And they say it is GDP, it's part of the GDP. That's not the right parameter. Strengthening our economics in our own way. India is an agrarian country. As I said in the beginning, there are loads of vegetables which come into Bengaluru market and 40% get spoiled. That is not what is adding value to economy, but it frustrates the agrarian economy. It chokes the farmers. And they lose hope because there is no rate for them. And just by farm income, nobody survives. That is why all these subsidies are given to farmers, which becomes a vote bank thinking. It becomes a political thinking. So if you want to come out of it, we need to identify each vertical that makes sense to the globe. For example, I'm into supporting organic producers community. I do understand how self-reliant they are. The more self-reliant people you produce in India, and the less load will be on the economic system of the country to balance them. You are not paying 1 rupee to an organic farmer in this country. You're not paying anything. Instead, the farmer creates his own manure. The farmer creates his own seed bank. The farmer does all by himself and he sells good food to the people. And there is no subsidy for any of these products at his side. This is called empowerment. You grow well, you take premium, is empowerment. Today, an organic farmer doesn't put his load on the system at all. He doesn't burden the system at all. And the more we deburden the system, asking for this and asking for that, our GDP will be really, really high and the economy will be strengthened at the root level. The less we, you know, the less we think of being dependent on someone else, the better for the economic system. Am I clear,
Yeah,
Guru?
ma'am. Guru? Yeah, ma'am.
Yeah. Any question? So many children. There are 85 of them. Any question? Girls? Empowered girls. I see a few names here, but I don't see questions. Any question?
Okay, students, if you don't have any queries, then I think we shall conclude.
Yeah. All of them are commerce students here or any other
Yes,
stream?
ma'am.
All of
They're
them.
all, yes, commerce students.
Okay. And they need to know a lot of industries, because their exposure going to be with different kinds of clients.
Right.
There's some question from Shalini. Some buzzer is happening.
No, that's me, ma'am.
Ah, okay. Sorry, ma'am.
Okay, then Tejashri?
Yes, ma'am, I will continue.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for this thought provoking session, ma'am. Indeed, it was amazing. Thank you for providing deep insights about economic condition of India, pre and post evasion of British, and also past glory of India. Thank you for also taking up all our queries and resolving them. Hereby, I request Purnima of second year BCom to propose vote of thanks.
Thank you, Tejashree. A very warm good afternoon to one and all present here. I am Purnima J from second year BCom C section. I feel honored and proud to have the opportunity to propose a vote of thanks on this wonderful webinar, Swarajya at 75. I deem it a great honor and privilege to present the vote of thanks to all who have assisted and organized this informative webinar. First and foremost, my heartfelt thanks to our honorable speaker, Srimati Shakuntala Iyer Madam, who made her time to grace this webinar. Thank you, ma'am, for your regardful and profound thoughts, which immensely motivated us. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. And I would like to say a word here about Disha Bharat's great initiatives and thank them for giving this opportunity to me. And it's always my pleasure to interact with children, but very unfortunately, we are in a digital era where I don't get to see you individually. And I would like to take a chance to see all of you soon. Thank you very much.
I would like to thank the organizing team, Disha Bharat, and program coordinator, Ms. Lavanya Madam, for making this webinar a very significant and interesting. My heartily thanks to our Honorable Principal, Dr. Anil Kumar Sir, for his support, vision, and commitment in this webinar. Thank you, sir. I thank our beloved HODs, Dr. Nagaraj MS Sir of BCom, Shri Jagadish A. Sir of BBA, Srimati R. Shanti Krishna Madam of BCA, and Mrs. Lavanya Balaji Ma'am of MCom for their valuable contribution and encouragement. And also, I would like to express my gratitude to the convener, Dr. Shalini Madam, for her guidance and support towards this webinar. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
I thank all our faculty members for their dedication in this webinar. I owe special thanks to all the distinguished invitees present here accepting our invitation. Last but not least, I thank you, my fellow students, for your evincing interest and cooperation in making this webinar a resounding success. Finally, I leave this inspiring quote by Martin Luther King: "The time is always right to do what is right." Once again, I thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Purnima, for vote of thanks. Thank you, everyone. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.
Shakuntala ma'am, thank you so much.